We'll start. Om Tvameva Mata cha Pita Tvameva Bandhuscha Sakha Tvameva Vidya Dravinam Tvameva Sarvam Mama Deva Deva Sri Dakshinamurti Sudeshikendram Dvaipayanam Sutrakritam Munindram Sri Shankaram Bhashyakritam Yatindram Maddeshi Kanchapi Namami Vityai Om Namo Brahmadibhyo Brahma Vidya Sampradaya Kartribhyo Vamsarishibhyo Mahadbhyo Namo Gurubhya Sarvopaplavarahita Prajnana Ganaha Pratyagarto Brahmaivaham Asmi Om Prapannaparijataya Totra Vetraikapanaye Jnanamudraya Krishnaya Geetamritaduhe Namaha. Pranams everyone. We are doing the 16th chapter where Bhagavan is enumerating the Daiv-Asura-Sampad. He is providing all the gunas that one has to imbibe for getting this jnana, and the gunas that one will have to eradicate from the personality for getting this jnana. These gunas not only help in the spiritual progress, these gunas will help us even in our material world. These gunas will really help us even in achieving the material goals that we may have in our lives. So when we look into it, we look at it at both angles. Of course, the ultimate benefit of having all these gunas is when we are able to progress spiritually. So we are doing the second shloka now. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Ahimsa Satyamakrodha Tyagashantirapaishunam Daya Bhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardavam Hirachapalam. So Bhagavan, after enumerating 9 gunas in the first shloka, is giving further gunas in this second shloka, out of which we had already seen Ahimsa, Satyam, Akrodha, Tyagaha. Now we are doing Shantihi. Shantihi, as I said, is actually the benefit that one might get out of Tyaga. We saw Tyagaha earlier, the ability to renunciate, ability to sacrifice, and once what is the benefit of that? The benefit of that is Shanti, or a calm mind. Or in other words, we can also say Samaha. We have said Samaha, Damaha, Uparamaha. We had seen that as the general qualifications that comes under Samadhi Shatka Sampatti. And as I said, what happens generally when we see a person who is doing a tyaga or a sacrifice, we look at him with a sense of pity. As an object, we see it as the person as an object of sympathy. But actually, truth be said, as I said, we should not look at the person who sacrificed with pity or sympathy, because the benefit that real benefit that he is getting is Shanti. And not many people understand this. It is a general tendency for everybody to cry for that person and feel for that person because he or she has sacrificed. But the real benefit of doing tyaga is happiness. So this particular value, we are seeing it for the first time. We are not seeing this in chapter 13 also. So we would go in a bit more detail for this particular value. We had probably seen it in chapter 13 also, I believe. But anyway, we'll go in a bit detail for this one. So as I said, Shanti means mind control or mental discipline. And what does Shastra say? Shastra says that the mind is basically an instrument, karanam. Karanam as in the instrument that is used to get the knowledge from the outside world. We have Bahya Karanam, Antakaranam. Antakaranam, mind is the Antakaranam. The Indriyas, the sense organs are all Bahya Karanam. So as an instrument, whatever is the instrument that we want to use, the person who uses the instrument should be in control. So the Karta should be in control of the Karanam. Only then the instrument will be properly utilized. Suppose we take a car. It is an instrument for going from one place to another. So when the driver applies the brake, the car should stop. And if the driver wants to accelerate, the car should move. If the car decides to do whatever it wants to do, then it will lead to accidents. It is not the ideal situation. And we'll have to apply the same rules for all the instruments of the body as well. Any instrument, it should be in the control of Karta. So if we look at it, what is the Lakshanam of a Karta? What is the definition of a Karta? According to Panini's definition, it is Swatantaraha Karta. The Karta means here what we said is a doer, the person who is handling the instrument. And the Karta should have 100% freedom. And that means he should be independent without receiving the order. So if the mind is instrument, who is the Karta? The Ahankara, we say, the Ahankara with the Buddhi. The mind should be controlled by the I along with the intellect. The Buddhi is the Karta. So the I is the doer here and the mind is the instrument, Karanam. That's how Shastras actually dissect our body. When we go to the Panchakosha Vilakshana, we have this Manonmaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha. There we would have seen mind, and then after that is the intellect. But what happens in our experience? I do not seem to be the Karta, because it is the mind which takes the role of Karta. The mind decides what I have to do today. I feel like sleeping, or rather the mind feels like sleeping, it sleeps, the body and I sleep. The mind feels like eating something, we eat. The mind feels like saying something, we say it. So it looks like as if the mind seems to be in control rather than I being in control. Initially, we would have decided not to open our mouth when we go and meet this person. But what happens? After meeting after a few minutes, our mind will force us to say things that we wouldn't want to say, wouldn't want to say in the first place. Same thing with food. Initially, we would have said that we wouldn't want to eat more. Then once we go there, the mind gets weakened by what it sees on the menu, and then we end up eating much more than what we had initially planned or agreed within ourselves. So who seems to be in control? The Karanam, the mind. Our mind seems to be in control. The mind seems to have taken, the mind is able to take the role of Karta also. So this is the problem for us. In fact, in Kathopanishad, the mind, there is an analogy given. The horses, there is a chariot example, and in the chariot example, the horses are all the sense organs, and they are, and the mind are the reins. The Buddhi is the charioteer. So we have to use our intellect the intellect has to use the reins, which is the mind, to control our sense organs. So our mind, it can be kept as karanam, as an instrument, only if it is trained well. If we don't train the mind, or even if we let it live as it is, let it actually work as it wants, then what happens is the mind will soon start taking control of ourselves. Mind is also a jada instrument, as in jada means it's inert principle. We have seen it. It's also made of panchakosha, panchabhutas and all those things. It is quite similar to pen or a knife, but the problem with the mind is the mind has got a reflected consciousness principle as well, and that means it is sentient, and therefore it can really take decisions. So we have to be careful about this. So what is Shanti? Shanti is basically, as I said, samaha. Samaha means keeping the mind as an instrument. The mind being subservient to our intellect. That is called as Shanti. That is called as samaha. Why this is needed? Because if we do not have the mind, if we do not control the mind on its own will not help us to reach our goal. If we let the mind wander or take control of our lives, we will not be able to achieve the goals that we have planned or we want to achieve. So the samaha means controlling mind, using the mind as an instrument, making the mind subservient to intellect. This is what it means. Now, for us to actually be able to control the mind, it is now important to know about the mind itself. What is mind? Under what conditions the mind can become an instrument? And what is the implication of things when mind does not act as an instrument? So we will see that. We'll see them briefly right now. So we'll see first of all, how is the mind being used by us? What sort of relationship we have with our mind? What is the role of our mind? Or what are the duties or things that the mind does for us? So we will see that. So we'll see how is the mind being used, what sort of relationship we have, what is the role of the mind, what are the things that mind is supposed to do. So first, mind, the first thing that is being, how the mind is being used? First and foremost, mind is the samanya karanam, general reason or a general instrument for all the Pratyaksha Pramanam. Pratyaksha Pramanam meaning whatever I see, hear, taste, feel, these are all called Pratyaksha Pramanam. Direct inference or direct perception. Not inference, direct perception. So the mind is the Samanya Karanam. Samanya Karanam meaning it is the instrument that is used for perception. It is the instrument that is used for attaining knowledge about things around me. Pratyaksha Pramanam means we use these 5 sense organs to gain knowledge about this world. Right? We see, we use eyes, ears, nose, tongue, skin. What happens when we actually gather this knowledge? The mind is able to help us process that information. Without the mind, the eyes by themselves will not be able to gather the knowledge that I am looking for in this world. For example, my eyes might be open, but if my mind is not behind the eye, then I will not be able to recognize the person. Many a times it would have happened for us. We would have been walking on the road, and then there would be somebody whom we know would actually cross past us, and we wouldn't recognize. Not because we had not kept our eyes open, not because we had not seen that person, but simply because our mind was not behind the eyes. Our mind would have been in some other, thinking about some other things, that we would have failed to recognize that. So, and we see a lot of misunderstandings also happen because of that. People complain, you saw me and yet you did not acknowledge me on purpose. How rude you are, and all those things. So the reason being, the eyes by themselves will not be able to pick the knowledge. It requires the mind to be behind the eyes. Or for example, my ears could be open, but if my mind is not behind the ears, then also we will not be able to gather that knowledge. If we are sitting in the class, our ears are open, the teacher is teaching, but if the mind is elsewhere, then it will not go inside. The knowledge will not be processed. So the mind is samanya karanam for pratyaksha pramanam. Samanya karanam, it's a general instrument for all the perception. Now the second thing where mind is being used is for Anumana Pramanam. Anumana Pramana meaning inference. For inference, the mind acts as Vishesha Karanam. Vishesha Karanam means it's not general, it's specific instrument. For example, in some places we will have to use data and infer on things. Wherever we have data and inference to go with it, then the mind has a bigger role to play. For example, if a person is actually behaving in a different manner, then the mind will try to understand the reason behind it. So why is this person behaving it? What is the intention behind it? Or what has been the change in circumstances? So why is he? So the mind will try to infer, and for that the mind is the Vishesha Karana. It's a specific instrument that is being used whenever we need to infer on things. So this is the second one. So first, why mind is needed? Mind is needed for as a general instrument for all the Pratyaksha Pramana. The second is mind is Vishesha Karanam for all the Anumana Pramana, which is the inference. Now the third is the mind is the instrument for experiencing joy and sorrow. So the mind is the place where we experience joy and sorrow. How can we prove this? How do we get to know this? See, when we are in deep sleep, there is no mind. There is no mind, and therefore we neither have sorrow nor have joy. We are neutral. So the mind is the place where we experience joy and sorrow. When we say joy and sorrow, we talk about the Vishaya Sukham, the Sukham or the sorrow that we experience through the objects around the world. We experience that in the mind. So this is the third purpose or place where the mind is being used. Fourth point. This is the important point. The fourth point is Mind is the storehouse of all our good and bad gunas. It is the storehouse of our character. So where do we keep our good values? We can't keep our good values in the hand. We can't say that my right hand is a good hand, my left hand is a bad hand. We don't have it, the gunas, in our legs or ears or eyes or everywhere. We do not keep the gunas in any other part of the body. Whether it is good or it has bad, it has to be in our mind. That's why in Tamil we say, avanukku nalla manasu, ketta manasu. We say we associate that nalla or ketta, the good or bad, with the mind. So the mind is the storehouse of our character, whether it being good or bad. This is the fourth one. The fifth one, where the mind is being used. The mind is an important instrument for dhyana, as in meditation, or other sadhanas. See, to gain this Atma Jnana, we require mind. Mind is a key instrument that is needed or required for us to be able to get this Jnana. Once we get this Jnana, to convert that to Jnana Nishta also, to be able to convert that knowledge into assimilated knowledge, to make that knowledge into our personality, mind is the instrument. So for dhyana, for meditation, we need the mind. For doing any kind of sadhanas where perception might be involved, mind is required. So the mind's cooperation is needed at all places. We normally underestimate our mind, as in we do not give enough importance for our mind. But the mind has got tremendous potential and it is of tremendous importance. Even the whole world can turn our enemy. We will need only one friend, and that one friend should be our mind. If that is the case, we won't feel any problems in this world. We will not face any difficulties. We will not have any obstacles. But look at the other way around. Even if the whole world is my friend, the whole world, everybody is friendly to me. But if my mind is my enemy, as in it's not cooperating enough, the mind, even if the whole world is my friend, I can get into depression and we will not be able to achieve anything if the mind is an enemy. So mind has got a critical role, critical function. So mind is an instrument. We have now understood it. Mind is an instrument. Mind is also the storehouse for all our character, for all gunas. Now, for any instrument, we need to maintain that in our daily life, whether it is in kitchen where we have utensils or cookers or whatever it is, or a car as an instrument, or clothes, shoes, whatever it is, whatever we use, we have to maintain them. If it's clothes, we have to wash them, we have to iron them, we'll have to hang them properly, we'll have to ensure that they don't get crumpled. If it's car, it has to be serviced, we'll have to put enough petrol, we'll have to wash it. Same thing with any of the kitchen utensils. So any instrument that we use in our life, it has to be maintained. And for the maintenance, we will allot some dedicated time. For washing the clothes, there are some dedicated time. For ironing clothes, we'll have to dedicate time. For maintaining the car, we'll have to give some time for it. So any instrument requires maintenance, and we'll have to give some dedicated time to maintain it. But what happens to the mind? In spite of the mind helping us in so many things, it is the one that is behind our general perception of the world to gather any knowledge. It is the instrument that is required for us to infer anything that is happening around us. In spite of being such an important instrument, we do not give any time to maintain. We just leave it at is. We just let it run. The mind is there. It will take care of itself. So we let it run on an autopilot. And that is where we make our mistake. And why am I warning about this? Because we will see what are the implications if the mind is not maintained properly. Once we understand, hopefully we'll take some remedial measures to, at least from now on. So sometimes people might say, what sort of wretched mind I have, They may say, this mind is killing me. Sometimes we do not have control on the thoughts that our minds get, the thoughts that get processed by our mind, that we feel very, very unhappy. So the mind is very clearly, if we let it go on its own, it can create problems. So what happens if we don't maintain the mind properly? How it impacts each of the functions that we saw. The first function we saw was that the mind is the samanya karanam for Pratyaksha Pramanam. Basically the general instrument for attaining any knowledge. So if the mind is not kept properly, what happens? We cannot get the knowledge even from Pratyaksha Pramanam. So our eyes will see, but we will not be able to recognize. Our ears will hear, but we will not listen. So, whenever we don't recognize things properly, or whenever we don't listen to people properly, it means our mind is not working properly. It means the mind is doing things on its own. So I am asking the eyes to see, which means I expect the mind to be behind my eyes and process whatever is being seen. But the mind decides to act on its own. It is doing things on its own. I am actually sitting in the class, hearing things. I am asking the ears and the mind to be behind the ears to process whatever is being said. But if the mind starts to do on its own, I am hearing but I am not listening. We don't get the prama. Prama means knowledge. Instead, we do get Brahma. Brahma means mistake. We get wrong knowledge. So the mind, if it is not maintained properly, set some of the basic things that are needed, not just, as I said, not just for a spiritual growth, even for this world, for achieving things in this world, it will not be, if it doesn't cooperate, we will not be able to achieve things. Now, the second one we saw as Vishesha Karanam, or for Anumana Pramanam. Basically, wherever we use inference, the mind is required. And there have been many times where we have to use inference to gain knowledge. For example, we go to a house as a guest we should know when to leave. If they keep talking about things, we have to understand where is the hint for us to leave. And what happens sometimes, if they see the clock again and again, then you know that actually they are indicating us to leave. So there are a lot of subtle things that our mind will have to process whenever we are dealing with people, whenever we are dealing with things in this world. Sometimes what happens, people do things with a good intention. And if our mind is not good enough, and if our mind is not properly maintained, we will misunderstand the person. We think the person has done things only to hurt us, without understanding the intent behind it. And that reason being, the mind probably is not maintained properly. These are the indications for us. We would be able to relate to whatever we see whatever we see around us, and also within us. Especially around this misunderstanding, right? If we actually give a benefit of doubt to a person, say we feel we have been wronged, but I give the benefit of doubt to that person. But if I actually do that, what happens is, even if the person has committed a mistake, maybe out of the 10 times that I have given the benefit of doubt, even if they had done mistake, say 9 times, but the 10th time that because I had been giving all the benefit of doubt, the ones that I had given the benefit of doubt would give me a greater mental peace and satisfaction and happiness than the 9 times that I would have been wrong. Again, this is something that has to be experienced. If we do it consistently, we will be able to see the benefit that we get. Try to give the benefit of doubt as much as possible to others. Then you will see the mind becoming calmer. Because the ones that we probably, if the general tendency is also always to find fault, because the mind is not able to see the good intent behind it, and then we try to find the fault behind the person, we lose that person, because the person would say it's not worth it. And if we lose a good person in our life, we lose a lot. Having a good person in life is very difficult. If we keep faith on a wrong person, on the contrary, if we try to give benefit of doubt to all around us, or most of the people around us at most times, because we know that our mind is not actually working fine, our mind is not able to do the inference properly. And if we keep faith on a wrong person, there is a possibility that there could be some losses. There could be some losses because of the trust or whatever that we have. We might lose some money, it's okay. But once we lose good people, trustworthy people from our life, then it is a big loss. Why? Because such good people, trustworthy people are rare. So it is in our interest to keep them within our circle. To meet good people itself is rare. And if we get a chance to meet these people, and if we lose their friendship because of a wrong judgment from our side, then this is the biggest loss. Even Upanishad says so. So the idea is we should not lose good relationships, good friendships, good sanghas, or goodwill from people because of some bad judgments from our side. And the judgments come from our mind. So we have to understand that. And any relationship today, right? Any relationship is always about inference. It's always, we try to infer how do this person react, because we are not able to see their mind. We don't know what is the intent of what is in their mind. We are not able to see that. So it's always about inference, and whether the inference is right or wrong depends on how well our mind is, how good our mind is, how well maintained our mind is. So the mind should be properly disciplined. So this is for the Vishesha Karanam. Then we said the mind is the third point. We said is the mind is the instrument for experiencing joy and sorrow. So whether we experience joy or sorrow, it is dependent on how we have kept the mind. If we keep the mind properly, it will be radiating calmness. It will be radiating joy. So it will not be the one that is exhibiting restlessness or sorrow. So if mind is kept properly, you would be able to bring calmness to the situation. You would be able to bring some happiness around to the people around us. So a well-kept mind is very important. In fact, it is the mind which changes the situation into a joy or sorrow. Because you simply see, there is a situation and we feel sad about it. The reason, or we feel angry about it, the reason could be because the mind has inferred that this person is responsible for making my situation bad, and therefore I get angry or I feel sad. Because of the inference the mind does, and then we feel sad. But the same situation, the same outcome, if it is done by another person whom we like, then we don't feel sorrow. We don't feel bad about it. Suppose I have been made to wait. If I don't like the person, I would try to find fault. I will get agitated. My mind will be sad. I will be angry. There will be impatience. I will be exhibiting restlessness, all sorts of things. Because I don't like the person who has made me wait. But if it is a person whom I love, the person has made me wait, then I wouldn't feel bad. I would feel pleasure in waiting. I would say there was no problem at all. I had no issues waiting for you. So it is the mind which changes the situation, makes the situation whether it is joy or sorrow. It is not the situation. So the mind is again very important to be properly maintained here. It is the instrument for experiencing joy and sorrow. The fourth point we discussed was the mind is the storehouse of our good or bad gunas. It is the storehouse of our character. So if we keep our mind well maintained, it can store good gunas. Otherwise, if it is not maintained well, it will go in the wrong direction. It will give us trouble wherever we go. And once it goes to the wrong side, it will take much more effort to bring it to the positive side. First we'll have to bring it to the neutral, then we'll have to take it to the positive. So the effort is much higher. Remember, mind is the place where the samskaras are stored. So the mind, as we discussed in Introduction to Vedanta, is the instrument that is being carried forward in every birth of ours. So it carries the samskaras from our previous births. We can either store good or bad samskaras. It is left to us. So how we maintain the mind, how we discipline the mind, it will help us, it will decide on what kind of samskaras are being stored. So from simple Pratyaksha Pramana to attaining even Jnana Nishta, the highest knowledge, the mind is used as an instrument. So it is very important, it is imperative, it is definitely needed that we need to spend some considerable amount of time and effort to maintain our mind. The problem for us is this importance of this mind is underplayed by us. We take it for granted. To know how important the mind is, right? We just need to visit one of those, hospitals where people with mental illness are there. We can see how much they suffer. We just need to watch for a few hours. We will know how, people suffering from mental health, how difficult they have their lives. It will be so painful to see them. Only when we see them, we understand the importance of mind as a gift. It is a gift given by Bhagavan, by Ishvara. It is given to us, we have to maintain. Mind is our life. Mind is the one which is experiencing samsara. Mind is the one which needs to attain moksha. Mind is needed throughout our life. We are very particular about certain things that we use. We are very particular about, if I have a car or a particular phone or a particular possession, whatever I have, I'm very particular about how it has to be used, how it has to be placed. I will not let others take it. I will make sure that it is clean. I will make sure that it doesn't get scratches. I take so much of care for it. I put some covers for my phone, make sure that it doesn't, even if it falls off, it doesn't break, and all those things. These are instruments that we are going to use only for a few years. The phone is going to last for maybe 5 years. A car maybe for 20 years, 15 years, 20 years. What to talk about the mind? The mind is going to be there for the entire lifetime, not just this lifetime. In fact, throughout our subsequent births as well. These instruments, we can throw them after we use them. Mind we cannot throw. The mind is within us. I cannot say I want to place the mind outside for some time and live without that mind. It's not possible. I can't say if my mind is troubling me, I can't say I just keep my mind outside. I don't want the mind to trouble me. I want to be away from my mind. Not possible. We cannot throw out our mind. So it is important we give, again, I can come back to the same thing. It is important we give sufficient time, put in proper effort, discipline the mind, maintain the mind, improve the mind. So far we had seen what are the functions of the mind and how does it impact if it is not functioning properly. Now we'll see what is the upaya, or how do we discipline our mind, how do we keep our mind calm, how do we keep this instrument well maintained. In fact, truth be said, whatever sadhanas we are talking about, ahimsa, satyam, akrodha, all these sadhanas are here for this only, the mind only. So it is very difficult to point one particular sadhana to say this is the sadhana you have to do for keeping your mind well. All the sadhanas that we discussed in chapter 13, these sadhanas here are all for the mind only. All are done to discipline the mind in such a way that it is able to act as a servant and not as a master of me. So this is what we have to understand. What is the upayam? All the values that we have talked about so far, all the things that we said. Anyway, we'll take one or two here. See, if we want our mind to be calm and peaceful, we'll see some conditions under which it is possible. So I want my mind to be calm and peaceful. Under what condition it will be able to? The first one is values. The mind should have good values. The mind should have sadgunas. The first condition is we should attain these good values. What are those good values? We need not ask. We know whatever we are seeing here as Daiv-Sampad is all those good values. To however extent we are able to imbibe these good values, to that extent the mind will work well as an instrument for us. And when it does, the mind will also be able to exhibit happiness, joy. It will be able to radiate joy. So the good values are very important. Then the question might come, even to imbibe these good values, I need the mind as a good instrument. If the mind is really bad as an instrument, I will not be able to imbibe these values. If somebody is having already a depression, is already in a state of depression, I cannot go and ask them to say akrodha, ahimsa, shanti. Their mind will not be able to process those things. So if the mind is bad already, it cannot imbibe good values. So the mind, a reasonably good mind, is a place where we can start having or building these values. So we'll now talk about how to train this mind. Training this mind, the sadhana is dhyana. Dhyana meaning meditation. There are varieties of dhyana meditation. One such dhyana is, as I said, japa dhyana. Japam, manasa japam. The mind, we will order the mind. We will instruct the mind. We will command the mind. We do that because we have to let the mind know who is the boss. So we have to instruct, we have to command, we have to order the mind. And then we say, I am going to sit and do this dhyana. So when we go and sit and do this meditation, we will definitely face resistance. The body itself will resist first. Our physical body will first start resisting as well. Even if we are able to control the physical body and say, I'm not going to move my hands, legs, come what may. I'm not going to open my eyes. Even if we are able to control the physical body, to say, I am the boss, you are not going to move, the mind will not obey. The mind will start to resist. And just like we train the animals like a horse or bull to them, to work, to make them work as a bullock cart or a, what do you call that, horse carriage or something, we'll have to train this mind as well. So just as this training these animals, the animals will, when we try to train the animals, it will be very difficult to get the animal to agree to things and make them understand. But once it is trained, the moment you lift the yoke, the animal will automatically come underneath. In the same way, once we train the mind, and I'm saying, okay, I'm going to get into a dhyana, I'm going to sit now. The moment you sit, the mind will automatically get calm. It will automatically get seated. And this training is how you have to train. Initially, it will be difficult, but the training for the mind, as I said, we have to start with japa. And through constant japa, the mind can be trained into an instrument, made into a good instrument. Problem for us is the mind is mostly the master. It has been the master of our life for so many years. It has decided when we want to sleep. It has decided what we want to eat. It has decided what we want to see. It has decided what we want to speak. We have never let it know who is the boss. So now it's going to be difficult, but it can be changed. Only through japam we can get this corrected. There are other dhyana methods to make the mind calm also, like expansion meditation and all those meditations to make the mind calm. Ultimately, the mind has to be disciplined in two areas. One, chitta shuddhi. Chitta shuddhi is clean mind. To get a clean mind, what we have to do? Imbibe values. Second one is chitta ekagrata. Chitta ekagrata means focused mind. For that, the sadhana is dhyana, meditation. So these two disciplines, chitta shuddhi, chitta ekagrata, is called as mind control, samaha, shanti. So Bhagavan has given two ways to control and calm the mind in the 6th chapter. In the 6th chapter of Gita, Bhagavan will again talk about mind control. Where actually Bhagavan will talk about meditation the whole chapter. In that chapter, Arjuna will ask, the mind is so difficult to control. It looks like even if I can control the wind, but I'm not able to control the mind. So Bhagavan will give the answer. He will say, now two methods, Arjuna, Vairagya and Abhyasa. Vairagya meaning dispassion, Abhyasa meaning practice. So Bhagavan accepts, and he will accept. Bhagavan will say, I accept, Arjuna, controlling mind is indeed difficult, but it can be achieved through dispassion and practice. What is Vairagya? Vairagya is basically, I take away all the unwanted things out of my mind. By having Vairagya, anything that is not wanted in my life, I remove them from my mind. I take them out of my mind's sphere of influence. And then the Abhyasa is basically the training of the mind to keep the mind in control. So this mind control is important. See, just like a baby, or not a baby, or a small boy, small kid, 3-year-old, 4-year-old, they could be running all over the place. And if we are old, to catch them itself is a big task. And after catching them, to make them sit quietly in a place would be another big task. Similarly, the mind, to bring that mind from outside, which is constantly going outside, for it to be caught is difficult. Then once it is caught, to make them look inward is even more difficult. But it can be achieved through vairagya and abhyasa. So this is about samaha, mind control. With this, we'll complete the vichara of this value. And with this value, which is until 14 values we had seen this chapter, we have covered all the important virtues so far. The 20 virtues that we saw in the 13th chapter, and this we have covered all the important virtues or values. Whatever we are going to see from now on, these are all either simple values or an extension of the values which we had seen already, or there could be some synonyms or closely related values we would be seeing. So from now on, we'll not be doing much of a detailed analysis on these values, basically repetition. So in the next class, we will take the next value, apaishunam. We will do it in the next class. Any questions or comments? Okay. If we take hints, then people say you are reading little too much into it. What do we do then? Isn't it better to take things on face value? Yes, it is better to take things on face value. Sometimes an overworked mind will try to infer things which are probably not necessary, needed. How do we do right judgments? Very difficult to say unless we see the outcome. By seeing as the outcome, we have to be very honest to ourselves whether my judgment has gone right or wrong. The problem for us is when we make a wrong judgment, the mind will not accept it. We will try to justify why we made the wrong judgment, and we will blame the other person or situation. I think you can relate to it. What I say, I can give some examples. We try to say that this person behaved badly. Then we come to know that actually speaking, the person did not behave badly. It is just my reading of the situation. Maybe they didn't want to ignore us. Maybe they didn't want to disrespect us. But then the moment I know that I have made the judgment wrong, we will try to justify saying, oh, maybe this time they did, but they are like that only. Maybe this time they did not do because they were not in a situation where they could do. Or we will try to say, we will try to give some reasons behind our wrong judgments. How do we keep our mind properly? I explained it. I hope you got it. How do we store good samskara? What should we do to maintain and discipline our mind? I think again we discussed that. If we have got a hint that someone close is harming us, how do we protect ourselves? Seems to be very generic question. Not able to see the harming means what, closing, what sort of protection. I'm not able to get it. Maybe you can drop a detailed note here later on, then we can discuss. I'm not able to get a full understanding of this question.
So can I WhatsApp you the situation?
Sorry again?
Can I send you the details on your WhatsApp?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, we'll see in the next class. Om Purnamadah Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnameva Vashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shantihi. Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahimahishah Gobhramanebhyo Shubhamastu Nityam Lokas Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu. Hari Om Sri Gurubhyo Namah. Hari Om.
Hari Om, thank you.
Hari Om, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Namaha.
Thank you.